So let me tell you a story about how I should have gone to a Diddy Party and how my wife ended up on his album cover. So when I started blogging, it wasn't just about cricket. In fact, well before I ever did cricket, I had many blogs. But when I moved to the UK to start working, I started a blog on being an Australian moving to London. On it, I talked about all the weird cultural differences that not everyone else would always notice, but also just like normal shit I saw. Like when I went to the Pompidou Center in Paris on a holiday and I saw a guy wearing an all black shirt. So I wrote an article about what it was like to go to my first ever French art gallery and just see a guy wearing something that I could see in any pub back home in Melbourne. And then I added a few photos from the day. And one of the pictures I put up was when my wife, or probably girlfriend at the time, went to get our tickets for the Pompidou Center. I took her small little non-DLS camera and I took a photo of a sign when I was moving on an escalator. And I went up and down a few times just to get it right. And let's be honest, I am not a great photographer. I was a video camera operator back in the day and I have filmed all sorts of weird things like kids getting awards at schools, plays, and I was even a wedding videographer. But also I got a little bit better over the years and I did some music videos, some short films, and even parts of my own documentary. But with the still camera, I'm a lot more of an amateur, but I think I understand the basics at least. And for some reason, this framing really looked cool to me. And so I thought I wanted to get it right. And this was all pre-Instagram. So it wasn't about hits or anything like that. I just thought it had a bit of a mood and I wanted to capture it. So I take a couple of photos, decide that my first one is best, and then I upload it on this All Blacks in Paris post, and I completely forget about it. Like, I'm posting millions of things on my cricket website. I've got all these other websites as well. I never thought about that ever again. Until a few months later, I start getting emails from Sony. And I figure I've probably done something wrong on one of my blogs, and I've probably uploaded something against a copyright claim or something, and so I don't respond to all of these emails. Then I get an email from the head of A&R at Interscope Records. And I know enough about music to be like, no one in A&R gives any shit about copyright. Like, this is a legit thing. And this person is desperate to get in touch with me. So I send my phone number. And she calls me like 5 minutes later. And this is all back in like 2008. This wasn't like a WhatsApp call or anything. Like, in those days, you didn't really get that many international calls, right? Because they still cost a fortune. And she very quickly tells me, no, nothing about copyright, nothing you need to worry about. And she says that the designer of Diddy's new album used my photo in a display when they were coming up with ideas. So like, you know, a visual board, so that when he could come in, he could say, I like this, can we do something in this style? And on it is the photo I took at the Pompidou Center. But the thing is, despite the fact that Diddy looks at all of these different things, he just focuses, like hyper focuses on my photo. So much so that even when Sony said they couldn't get in touch with me, he kept saying, no, this is what the album cover needs to be. I still don't know to this day how the designer found my obscure blog. I was pretty good with SEO in those days, so maybe it was something like that, but I would happily buy that person a drink as thanks. Now, Diddy's album was called The Last Train to Paris, and it was a concept album about traveling on a train from London to Paris, right? And so my photo, to someone who didn't know, looked like a really cool Paris train station photo. Interestingly enough, I've been taking so many photos of the metro and they didn't use any of my metro photos. They used the one that wasn't at a train station. But then I was like, this is great. The only problem is I don't have the original file left. Like, this is probably months later when they're contacting me. It was just a holiday thing. I probably used that HD card like a bunch of other times and I just couldn't find the original photo. So the only photo that was left was the one that was on the WordPress blog, like really, really tiny. So I said to them, I can't sell you the photo, but I can sell you the rights to the photo. And so they gave me a little bit of money and I probably could have asked for even more. Especially as they agreed to it like in 10 seconds. But they then spent a lot more money on the photo because they had to recreate it in a way that it could be put on like a bus or on a billboard or something. And, you know, I don't know how you do that off the teeny tiny little photo that was on the WordPress blog. But as I wasn't going to make much money off it, I asked Interscope specifically if I could have a couple of other things. Like if they made a vinyl of it, I wanted a vinyl because I thought that would be a really cool thing to have in my collection. And then also I said, if he's going to have a release party, I would really like to be invited to it, whether it be in London or in Paris, whatever. I want to be there. And they were like, yeah, that is more than fair. And so the album is about to come out. And I think they contacted me not long beforehand. And so I thought I'm going to write an article on the same blog for anyone who reads it, which was probably like, I don't know, 200 people at most, and tell them that this cool thing happened on this blog that they read. So I write about how it happened, essentially the same story I've just told you. And then I also write something on the fact that I love rappers from the 90s, but I'm obviously much more of a Biggie and Tupac fan than I am a Diddy fan. Again, no one is reading this blog, so I don't think anything is going to come from this, but I just wanted to tell the story, and I thought some of the people who had been invested in the blog might get a bit of a kick out of it. Then I get an email from Sony telling me to stop doing interviews. I'm like, I haven't done an interview. So I email back and ask them, and they send me this collection of interviews. And I work out it's not a collection of interviews at all. What it is that someone has stumbled across my blog when they're looking for this. Probably because, again, I had good SEO. All of this is really about SEO. I could probably make a lot more money from SEO than I can from actually making content, but I would get bored. But the point is that someone found my blog post about the story, right? And then they wrote an article based on it. And then somehow their one article got picked up by every rap news site in the world. I cannot tell you, there was just thousands and thousands of hits on this one article over and over again. Now, none of this is really my fault. I haven't said anything that's not true. They had also never told me not to mention the photo or my involvement in it or anything, right? But I find out that Sony and also Diddy are really, really pissed. My assumption is Diddy is perhaps not happy because I've said in it I'm not a fan of his music. And Sony are pissed because they are trying to promote this album, and the article that is basically going viral around the world is all about the cover, and that's obviously not how they want to market this. And so they send a couple of emails, I send a couple back, and eventually they just stop corresponding with me at all. So even though I've asked for my free vinyl, which I'm assuming they made a vinyl, I never got it. And even though I asked to go to a p.diddy party, by that point, there was no way that Diddy was bringing me to any of his parties. And you can imagine at the time, I was like, oh, hell. Like, now I don't have a great story to tell because I want to go to this Diddy party and then tell all my friends what it was like to be there. Now I'm thinking, oh my God, I did pretty well here giving that whole thing a swerve. Can you imagine some of the fucked up shit I might have seen? So the only thing left to tell you now is that this little blur behind this letter, that's my wife. It is a very strange world.